What's going on? Almost that time of the season. Premier League starting up again. Gotta get my predictions out. This video probably won't be coming out till Friday, Saturday maybe. I'm being honest, I'm a bit behind on schedule, but I am recording this on a Thursday. It is, I have some time at the moment, 11:55 Thursday. So Prem starts up tomorrow. Arsenal commentary kicking off. Yeah, I already did my predictions. I already recorded predictions for back a while ago. Started a pod with me and my friend. Scouting report. Check it out.
I know it. Say it. Say it.
Go for it.
I have to say, I don't think he's one of the top managers. I think it's going to take this season, and I think the next season they can challenge for the top 6.
I thought this guy was gone as well. Thank you for the treble, but your servers are no longer needed here. You can go back to drinking a pub somewhere. We don't need you.
I don't know. I was thinking either second or first. I wasn't really sure.
What do you want? What are you going to say?
Just for the banter, I'll say first. So I have Arsenal second.
Gonna get straight into it. Big season up ahead. I'm super excited. Been a drought since the World Cup. I've been dying for club football. And yeah, in 20th, I will say. Look, I think they've done relatively well in terms of what they can do to strengthen for the Premier League season, but ultimately this was a team at the start of last season that was one of the teams in the championship that could potentially go down, and it is a bit of a miracle they went through the playoffs, got promoted to the Premier League, but ultimately I do think the squad just simply does not have enough quality, and I think they will be firmly cemented in 20th. And right above them I have Ipswich, who again I just don't think have enough as well. Didn't bring in enough players to make the difference. I mean, I think Gary O'Neill's a good manager, but I think it's going to be too tough a task for Ipswich to stay up in the Premier League. And then finally, I have Coventry, who I think out of the 3 promoted teams will provide the most fight. But ultimately, again, I just think that the gap between the 3 promoted teams and the rest of the league is just a bit too much this season. So like last season, I think I had 3 up, 3 down. And this time around, I have 3 up, 3 down. I'm even more confident that will happen. So yeah, I feel it. I've like in the couple of years past, where the 3 promoted teams have gone up and straight down, I think this one is pretty nailed on for this season. In 17th, I have Sunderland. Big drop off from last season, and the reason why I have them here is because I don't think they've done anything in the window. They haven't strengthened enough. This is a team that now is going to be playing Europa League football. They had a miraculous season last year, but they haven't brought in anybody, and I think that plus juggling European football. Xhaka, who was their most important player last season, is only getting older. And I think this is a team that will struggle in the Premier League. We saw it, I think Forest last season was a prime example that they had a remarkable season and them finishing in a European position. And they were just amongst the relegation battle for the majority of the season, despite going all the way to Europa League semifinal. So I'm expecting a similar story for Sunderland. Not saying they will get to Europa League semifinal, but in at 16th, I'm gonna go with Everton. I just don't think, again, this is a team that I had high expectations for last season. I thought they were gonna have a pretty good season. Fell off towards the end of the season pretty hard. I think in the window haven't really done enough. I just think they lack gold. I think that's something that Everton's been lacking for a couple of years now. And especially this season, like bringing like Brennan Johnson's not really good with the needle for me. Norgard. You expect Barry maybe to take a step forward off and very up and down first season, and then Ndai would have, I think he would have to put the team on his back a lot in order to propel them up the table. But again, with Everton, I think they'll just have enough of experience to Pickford, Tarkowski, the experienced players in that team to stay them clear of relegation. But I don't expect much from Everton this season. In at, where's it, 15th? 15th? At 15th, I'm between these 2. I'm going to go Palace. Go Palace in 15th. Palace, obviously losing Glasner is a huge loss for them after he's been a manager for Palace for over the last, I think, 3 seasons now. Sure, I think they've done okay in the transfer window with a couple of free signings, Mingueza, Tomiyasu, bring in Dwight McNeil, but we saw a drop off from Palace. I predicted this last season with the fact they'll be going for the Conference League, and I think they'll impact their league form similar to the Europa League. I think that'll be a competition to emphasize and really try to take advantage of, because they're not a club that typically is playing in Europe. So I think there'll be more prioritization on the football being played there. I think it will impact their league form. Palace, I think I think at 15th they'll be pretty relatively safe from relegation, but I'm not expecting Palace to be pulling up trees in the league, pushing for a high finish in the Prem this season. And right below them, I have Newcastle, who I was also debating between them and Palace for who I have at 15th. With Newcastle, I just feel there's just a lot of turnover in the club, and I think they're set up for a very poor season. Now, you can say that with Brentford last season. I think you looked at Brentford last season as a team that also had a lot of turnover. Yes, Newcastle to a higher scale, given the fact they lost Anthony Gordon, they lost Sandro Tonali, Bruno Mars, and even lost Eddie Howe. And despite your opinions of Eddie Howe, whether he was a fantastic manager, a manager who was holding them back, I think the fact that Eddie Howe's presence in the club is, his presence in the locker room in terms of establishing the culture at Newcastle since he's come into the club. And I think Newcastle are going to have a very poor season this year. And it seems like the project with them is, you kind of question where is it going from here, because you thought Newcastle with the takeover were really going to start pushing for top 6 positions. They were going to start contending for European football, potentially building a title contending squad over the next couple of seasons. But now it seems like the project is almost hit a dead end, if you will. So yeah, I have them at 15th. In 13th, I'm going to go with Leeds. I'm going to go with Leeds in 13th. I like their signings. I like Harry Wilson on the free is a great signing. James Trafford, I'm expecting to have a big season. Maharovic, I'm hopefully pronouncing his name right, from Sassuolo, a great defender. I think they've done smart business in the window. Daniel Farke steered them clear. I think it's a team that has a clear identity. They know how they play. They know how they want to play. Can give any team problems on their day. I'm expecting a solid season from Leeds. Nothing spectacular, but I do think they'll do pretty well in 13th. In 12th position, I'm gonna go with Bournemouth. Again, first time in playing in Europe. I think that will take a toll on the club. I think they've done pretty well with their signings. I think Antonio Silva, the Uruguayan striker they signed from Elche, his name, Alvaro Rodriguez. Yes, I couldn't remember his name for a second. I think those are pretty sharp signings. Obviously the loss of Iraola will be a big loss, but Marco Rose is a decent manager. I'm not expecting a season, one of the replicate season like they had last year, but I do think they'll be strong to finish mid-table. And like I said, I think the fact of balancing European football with Premier League fixtures, especially for a club and many players who have not really experienced that, I think will take its toll on this team. All right, moving on into 11th. In 11th, I'm going to go with, I'm between these two. I'm going to go Forest. Actually, no. I'm going to push Forest higher. I'm going to go Brentford and then go Forest. With Brentford, I feel, again, this is a team that made people roll off last season, including myself. They did end up finishing pretty high, but the thing with Brentford, I think Sangare is a good sign, but I think they did need a bit more if I really wanted to propel them higher up the table. I don't expect Igor Thiago to have a season like he had last year. I mean, look, I think he will score goals, but I don't expect him to be scoring the amount of goals he had last year. And still with Brentford, although they have a solid core, they didn't really lose any major players. I just don't think they've really strengthened enough to really convince me that they can go even further. I mean, if there is a chance, I would say the fact that there's 9 Premier League teams playing in Europe this season, and with fixture congestion and them being one of the teams that's not playing in Europe, yeah, I do think they have an opportunity to really push for a European position. But I'm going to have Brentford in 11th. And at 10th, I'm going with Forest. And the reason why I just swapped two is I think Glasner just is a better manager than Keith Andrews. Keith Andrews has done a great job at Brentford, but I do think Glasner shown the experience in this league. He's won stuff with Palace. With Forest, I still think they have a very good squad. I think the European football did take a toll on the team last season, and with Forest no longer playing in Europe, and I still think Forest squad is very good. They haven't really lost anybody too crucial to their May starting 11. I'm expecting them to have a decent season, finishing in 10th. And like I said, given the fact there's 9 Premier League teams playing in Europe, I think this is a team that could potentially challenge for a European position, but I'm going to have them finishing in 10th. Now, this is the biggest risk in my prediction because going back to the pod, spoiler, who I predict to be my biggest overachieving team, I'm going with Fulham. I have Fulham finishing 9th. The more I'm thinking about this, I'm dying this a little bit more. I probably should drop Fulham realistically to here. Maybe that makes more sense, but I'm going to stick with this just because it's what I said on the pod, on the Sky Report pod with me and Frank. But yeah, I have them finishing 9th because I just think, well, there's a couple things. One, they lost Marco Silva. I think they have a good core of players. They haven't really lost anyone too important. I like the signing of Goncalo Garcia. I rate him pretty highly, so I think he'll have a good season. But the thing with Fulham, where the doubt in my head is, look, Arbeloa, we can count Madrid as his first senior job. For me, like, given the circumstances at Madrid, I think he's okay. But really, I don't know how much of an expectation is really placed upon him. And I think with Fulham, you look at their front line, especially you look at the front line of whether it be Bob, Goncalo Garcia, Kevin on the left, Smith Rowe right behind them. I think it's very exciting. It's just the thing is that they're all young. If it doesn't click for them, then it could end really poorly. You might be times where this team goes on dry spells. That front line is inexperienced in this league. The attack will even click at all, but I do think there's a lot of talent, especially within the Fulham team and the squad. They have a good core to build upon. I think the attack has the potential to be very exciting this season, and I'm gonna back the players. So yeah, I'm gonna have Fulham finishing 9th. I think it wouldn't be a Premier League prediction without some relatively bold takes. Next up, I got Brighton. I have Brighton finishing 8th. Again, this is where Brighton I think Conference League will be important for Brighton. If anything, we could see a bit of a drop off from Brighton. I think last season with Brighton, when I watched them, for me, they're one of the weirdest teams to watch in the Premier League, because for me, there'd be games where they just don't look completely convincing, but then they get results. So like I like their squad, I like their manager. I just think 8th is like about where they kind of cement themselves really in the Premier League at this point. Honestly, like I'm looking at these 4. I'm really thinking of these 4, and I think all these 4 are interchangeable. I'm pretty confident about everything else. It's hard to predict this mid-table conjunction. And I think last season we also saw like the fact of how volatile the table was in terms of like how one win or how one loss can send you 4 or 5 places up or down the table in a match day. So I'm gonna have Brighton finishing 8th. At 7th, probably the boldest take of I have Liverpool. I'm seeing a lot of people put Liverpool firmly in the top 4. I don't see it. Like I like Uriel as a manager, but I think there's too many issues within the squad and the personnel. We can go with the goalkeeper, Alisson. I don't expect him to be fit for a 38-game season, especially at his age. The right back, for me, Liverpool don't have one competent right back at all. Like Jeremy Frimpong, he's not a right back. He can't defend. And then Connor Bradley, still out with an injury, I believe. I don't know if he's back. I don't think he's back. Maybe he is, but I don't think he is. And so for me, there's an issue there. You look at the center backs. Van Dijk, despite his legacy in this league, he's 35 years old. We already saw chinks in the armor, if you will, from Van Dijk's game last season. Do you expect Van Dijk a year on to really be able to have a bounce back season? I kind of doubt it at his age. The other, Araujo, who I'm going to be honest with, Barca fans celebrating his exit. Araujo being kind of a very rash defender. I'm not really sure how that will complement Van Dijk, if him and Van Dijk can really establish a partnership. I'm sure maybe the physical side of the Premier League will suit his game more. There is a world where that exists, but for me at the moment, I have my reservations. And the other 2 center backs, they brought in Jack Hay for big money, young center back. Sure, he has Van Dijk to mentor him, really support him in terms of his first season at Liverpool, but again, like I said, putting that trust in a 19-year-old center back, I think, is asking a lot. And then even Leone, same thing. Although not brought in for as big as a price tag, young center back. Not really sure. This is going to be really first full season after he tore his ACL. I think there's issues there. And then the left back situation, sure you have Kirkes, but what, Joe Gomez is your next man up? I'm not really sure. The midfield, I think Liverpool have failed to strengthen the midfield, which is a position I think they've been crying out for. I said last year they needed the DM, the defensive midfielder. They didn't bring it in. I think McAllister, coming off a really poor season last year, hasn't really shown anything that he's good enough to be starting week in, week out. For Liverpool, Gravenberch, sure, very good player. Szoboszlai, who I think is now starting to get a bit overrated, especially in terms of a creative demon. I'm seeing people put him as like, could be top assistant. For me, that's not Szoboszlai's game. For me, he's just someone who can do a bit of everything. I like a free kick on him, has a good engine on him, but really in terms of technical quality, I don't think Szoboszlai is really a technically I don't think he's that type of player. For me, if you're some kind of creative demon, you're not being placed at right back out of position mid-season, you know what I'm saying? Florian Wirtz, I'm a big fan of Wirtz, but again, I still am doubtful of him really having a resurgence in the Liverpool team. Sure, there was a spell last season where we saw maybe Wirtz coming into his own a little bit, but then an injury set him back, and then from then on, we haven't really been able to see anything from Wirtz. Even, the World Cup, I don't think he had an amazing World Cup. And in terms of Wirtz being the ERL system, especially being a player who's, I would say, very nimble and being supported by the likes of like McAllister and Gravenberch, I don't think there's enough legs there. On the wing, sure, Barcola, I think Barcola will be coming in by the end of the window, and I think he is an exciting player, but with Barcola, and I'm going to compare him to Doku, I think Barcola is better than Doku, just to clarify. It's a lot of the talent is there. It just comes at the end product. Is Barcola really ready to become the main? I don't know if he'll become the main guy at Liverpool, but does he have the potential to become the main guy at Liverpool? Will he realize his potential in terms of developing a consistent end product? I'm not really sure, especially first season. And then Isak up top, I think, sure, he's looked okay since he's come back from injury, but I think there is question marks still in terms of what condition he's in and in terms of his integration into the team. When Ekitike comes back, how is it going to be balancing Isak, Ekitike, And I don't think Liverpool still have a natural right winger. You could say Chiesa, if you will, but yeah, Chiesa's cameos have not been that great for Liverpool over the last 12 months. So yeah, I have my doubts about this team. Moving on to 6th place, I have Aston Villa. This might be overestimating Villa because I think they are losing a spine of their team. Emi Martinez, Constance probably most likely out the door. Ollie Watkins is also looking to be out the door, and Morgan Rogers went off to Chelsea. It's going to be hard to replace those figures who've been such a key part in the Unai Emery era at Aston Villa. I like Manzambi, great signing. Other good signings, I think Suzuki, yeah, smart signing as well. Ruggieri, solid left back. Other than that, for Villa, just made a couple other just okay signings like Wan-Bissaka. João Gomez, who I forgot to mention, also is a good signing. Yeah, I just expect Villa to be instant amongst the European positions. I think they've kind of established them as a team that can consistently get European football, but I'm not really sure they'll be able to go back-to-back in terms of finishing within the top 4, top 5. Champions League football will also have a huge emphasis on the team, so, or at least be somewhat of a priority for the team in terms of doing well in the Champions League. So I think that, again, that will take a toll on their league form, and I expect them finishing within 6th place. Now, UCL or top 5. In 5th, I have Spurs. I think with Spurs, I'm expecting them to have, take leaps and bounds this season. I think De Zerbi is a good manager, proven in this league, playing one game a week, but I think compared to Spurs last year, where many people, including myself, had Spurs finishing within the top, let's say top 7. I think, and you thought, the Europa League really would paper over cracks, which it did, and I think a lot of people fell for that, including myself, like I said. But this time around, they're only playing one game a week. I think in the window, they've been very aggressive, getting their business done early on, bringing in Tonali, Fernandez, and Vaheke in for big money. Looking to get Savinho, Marmoush into the door by the end of the window, which I think are 2 good signings for where Spurs are at. Yeah, I Spurs finishing 5th. I think De Zerbi will getting them back into amongst the top 6, where Spurs traditionally should be. 4th place, I'm Messi. I'm Messi. For those who don't know, Manchester City fan, and I'm extremely disappointed by the transfer window so far. Bringing Elliot Anderson for big money. I have my reservations about that signing. Sure, as we're seeing more and more prices come out for players in this market, it's looking slightly better, but still, 120 million for Elliot Anderson. I'm not really entirely convinced yet. For me, a more unconvincing signing would be 100 million for Buwadi, who, look, I think he's had an okay World Cup. I think he got a bit overrated in the World Cup. I hadn't watched him at Lille, so I can't really form too much of an opinion there, but at least from my perspective, slapping a 100 million price tag on an 18-year-old and expecting him to come into Manchester City and revolutionize the midfield, I think there's too much pressure there, especially for someone who's 18 years old. I don't know if he is ready for that level of responsibility. Other than that, the outgoings, the loss of Rodri is huge. Bernardo Silva and John Stones, even though those 2 have been on the decline, are 2 massive leaders in the locker room. I just think, other than that, City haven't really brought anyone. They haven't been linked to anyone. Buwadi's been in the final stages for like a month. So I'm frustrated in the fact that he's not in the club. He hasn't had a preseason with the team. How well he'll integrate into the team. Seeing City get rid of Savinho, who I'm not the biggest fan of Savinho, so for sure. And then Marmoush, who might go down as one of the worst signings in Man City history. Not because I don't like it, not because I'm doubting his quality as a player, because for me, as the day has progressed, he's looking more and more like a panic buy from the season we brought him in, because there's no real position for him in this team. I think there's other question marks in the fact that, like, Phil Foden, what type of season we're going to see from him. He's coming off 2 poor seasons. For me, I already said last year, Phil Foden, for me, last year was a make or break season, and he got rewarded with a new contract. And I have my reservations in terms of what he can still offer for this team. Similarly, I think City are lacking winger depth because Doku's out for a number of weeks. Then we just have Semenyo, and then who else? You're gonna tell me Jack Grealish is back in this team? Why is Jack Grealish splitting this team? If you were getting loaned out at 29, 30 years old, you think we're gonna want you a year later? I don't thank you for the trouble, Jack Grealish, serving for the club, but service is no longer needed. So I don't understand why he's playing in the Community Shield. Kovacic, this guy was injured for an entire year, came back with a new hair transplant. And all of a sudden, he's back in the squad. He's going to be our starting DM because apparently the club now wants to sell Nico Gonzalez to Newcastle, who I don't understand because Nico Gonzalez, from the start of last season up until Rodri's return, was doing very well, filling in for Rodri's absence. So I don't understand why we're getting rid of him for a year. Rodgers, after one season, this is a guy who was one of the best players in Serie A 2 seasons ago. Had glimpses last season. Not gonna say that his was a success or anything, but to write him off after one season, I think, is extremely rash. And if the club goes out and it's going to spend 120 million on Enzo Fernandez, I'm really questioning the Hugo Viana and the rest of the board, because for me, Enzo Fernandez is not the type of profile that they need at the moment. And for 120 million as well, it doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm extremely frustrated and I'm extremely concerned for this season. The only thing for me keeping City firmly within the top 4 is Haaland, because I think Haaland's goals will just be enough to keep City in amongst the top 4. Donnarumma, I think, good enough keeper. The back line, I think, is all right. I still have my reservations in terms of, for me, City need a right back, because, again, Mateus Nunes, I think he's one of the more overrated players in the league. I think yes, he had a good season last year, but for me, ultimately, he's still not really good enough. I mean, another right back option, because if he were to go down, we're looking at Rico Lewis. For me, he's definitely not good enough, because for me, he's undersized, and I already had a rant about him, so I'm not going to get into it. And like I said, I think the starting backs are fine with like Kusanov, Gahey, Diaz, Guardiola, whatever. But yeah, I'm extremely disappointed in City. And then I've seen this morning where City linked to this Allen guy in Brazil for like 100 million. And I don't like, right now I'm extremely frustrated with the window, and I'm not really inspired in terms of where City are going to go this season. For me, Haaland is really the main factor this season. And yeah, I mean, I'll get into a little bit more into the other predictions of I actually don't want to spoil too much. So, okay, moving on to third, I have Chelsea. I think with Chelsea, I think there's a lot to look forward to this Chelsea this season. Xabi Alonso, I like him a lot. Fantastic seasons at Leverkusen, going on being there. Real Madrid, where I think ultimately he was more undermined by the dressing room and other external factors of the club, rather than his tactics. Even though I'm not going to say that he left Madrid blameless. Going into Chelsea, I think I've made some good signings. Morgan Rogers, I'm a huge fan of his game. Palestra, Lacroix, even like Quenda coming in, Barco. I think there's a lot to like about Chelsea, even bringing experienced players like Welbeck and Henderson, although there's question marks on how much they will contribute to the actual performance on the pitch in terms of having someone in the locker room, which I think Chelsea have been lacking over the last couple of years, given their transfer strategy of just bringing in young talents. I think is smart. I think it will take a while for his Chelsea team to click, because I think Xabi Alonso, if you asked him now, like, what's his best team is, or will his best team on match day 1 be the same team on match day 38, I doubt it. So I think it will take a while for his Chelsea team to really find its best starting 11, but once they do, I think I'm expecting a lot from Chelsea in terms of the excitement they can bring, playing 1 game a week. I do expect them to be firmly within the top 4, potentially contending for the title at a certain point in the season. And ultimately, I think they'll just drop off just because of the lack of the inexperience. And I do think some of their players are just young, and there is some question marks. Like the goalkeeper, for example, like Robert Sanchez, I think is a guy his performance is extremely volatile. Like 1 week you can get like a master class, and the next week he drops like 2 clangers. So yeah, I think with Chelsea there's a lot to like. Oh, I have them champions. I did not mean to do that. My Premier League champions, Arsenal. I predicted them to win the league last season. I have them to win the league this year. I'm United second. Now, before I get into Arsenal, I'm going to talk about United. Now, I think a lot of people are starting to disrespect United going into this season, because a lot of people are talking about the fact that, they're playing European football and the fixture congestion and X, Y, and Z. Is the squad deep enough? I think that talking point is now starting to get overblown. Like, yes, it is a factor, but I think United have, in terms of the signs they've made so far, in Tielemans and Santos, I think they've done the smart signs in terms of bringing in those midfield reinforcements. Baleba seems to be on the way as well. So United have gotten the midfield reinforcements they need. The only thing you can ask for is maybe a left back and another winger, you could say. But like I said, I think the factor of playing European football and the fixture congestion is overblown, because for me, with United, they have players who have played in Europe before and are more experienced compared to maybe, like I said, like the fixture congestion with other teams who are not as experienced as playing in Europe. And for me, if you're winning games, it's synonymous with winning, like momentum carries. Sure, maybe United will go through bad periods this season. I'm expecting a big season from Sesko. I'm expecting a big season from a lot of their players, and Wilmo Cunha, they got goals in that team. Yeah, I think the back line is solid. Lemon's a good goalkeeper. Like I said, the only thing with the midfield, I would say, I think Casemiro's absence, I still think, like, despite bringing all these 3 midfielders, I think with Casemiro, you get a level of headness and like just experience in the midfield with Casemiro, and especially popping with goals, because I think Casemiro scored a lot of important goals last season. That's something I think United haven't directly replaced, you can say. I think that's something that isn't really mentioned, but yeah, I'm expecting a good season from United, because, like I said, people talk about the fixture congestion, but for me, like, as for Sir Alex Ferguson say, he doesn't check the league tables till March, and United are in amongst, let's say, off the top by, let's say, 8, 7 points, I think they're still within contention for the title. And that's why, for me, I had them in contention because I have Arsenal as Premier League champions. Not because I don't think this Arsenal team is a superb squad or anything like that. It's just more because I feel all the other teams this season have more problems than Arsenal. Like I think last season, I went to this and at least my thinking going into last season was, oh, you had Arsenal who have been competing, who have been pushing for the league for the last couple of years. Yeah, Man City, you could never write out and had, we're looking pretty good after the signs they made. Had some decent performances in the Club World Cup. And you had Liverpool have a monstrous window, and they're coming off a good season last year. And Chelsea, who won the Club World Cup, like could they do something in the league? So for me, there's a lot more excitement in terms of the potential these teams could reach within the Premier League. For me, I'm looking at the other way and around. I'm like every other team for me has more problems, and Arsenal have the least amount of problems. So I have Arsenal winning the league, and I'm not expecting Arsenal to run off for the league. And if they do run off for the league, for me, it's more of a clubs around Arsenal aren't good enough, rather than Arsenal being overly exceptional. With Arsenal, like I said, this is the best defensive team in the league. Expecting another big season from Raya. Sure, the absence of Saliba will be felt, and it will definitely put the Arsenal defense under some pressure, but like I said, I still don't think that's gonna be a needle mover given the fact that the chasing pack I just don't think is strong enough. I think Bruno Mars is a statement signing, off winning the league, bringing a player of his quality is a message to the entire league that they're looking to stay on top. The only thing with Arsenal again is the attack. How much can you trust it? I'm expecting Saka to have a resurgence this season. Solis, I'm hopefully pronouncing it right. Looked pretty good in the Community Shield, so maybe he can do something. I think the absence of Trossard will be felt because he is a player, depending on how much you rate him or not, he is someone who does pop up with important goals for Arsenal. Gyökeres, we'll see what he can do this season. I'm not really his hugest fan, if I'm being honest, but like I said last year, despite his fit into the team, he is a player who will just get goals. Arsenal just needs someone who's going to be there. Pretty much same thing goes with Havertz. Declan Rice, who I think this season, I think he will be out not for like a fairly extended period of time, just because I feel like the amount of minutes that he's played at, the intensity that Arsenal and England play at, I think it will catch up to him this season. I'm not praying for injuries, but that's just my prediction, similar to how Rodri, 2 seasons ago, you were saying Rodri's playing every single game, every single minute, and then eventually like he tore his ACL. So I'm thinking a similar case for Rice, just going off, how both play very similarly important roles to their respective clubs. I'm not comparing the qualities of the players, just the importance of the 2 players. But yeah, I have Arsenal finishing as Premier League champions. And like I said, that's why I said United will be 6, 7, 8 points on the top, because I don't think Arsenal will run away with it. I think they'll just be comfortable enough. Even last season, Arsenal had the opportunity to run away with the title. They couldn't really run away to the point to where it came back in City's hands, and City ultimately made a mess of it. But yeah, I have Arsenal just finishing as champions again. Arteta also, every other top 6 team has had a managerial change in the last 6 months. Arteta has been at the club for numerous seasons now, so yeah, Arsenal Premier League champions. And then quickly, top goal scorer, Haaland. I think that's the easiest prediction of the whole video. Barring injuries, I don't really see a world where Haaland doesn't finish the top goal scorer. My player of the season, which is going to be very interesting, I have Ryan Cherky as my player of the season. For me, with Maresca, in terms of him finding out his best team, and in terms of where players are going to play, and in terms of going through this transition period with City, I think chaos and the volatility and the uncertainty in the squad, I think is going to open up for Cherky, for someone who likes to take the game by the scruff of the neck. I think with, like, for example, Pep, in terms of, you could say, limiting his players, in terms of limiting, Cherky had a good season last year, you could say, but I think Cherky will have more leeway in order to take risks and in order to really become a maverick in this team. I'm expecting a lot of the creative burden to come to him, because for me, Doku's inconsistent. Semenyo for me isn't really a creative demon. And for me, he's a very good end product player, but not necessarily creative. Haaland is just a finisher. And Foden, I don't think Foden is a creative player. For me, Foden is also like a finisher. I think a lot of the attacking creativity will have to come through Cherky this season. I'm expecting a big season from him. So for me, I have him as my player of the season. Also because of the fact, again, with Arsenal, you don't really have a standout player in terms of like who would win in the league. If anything, you could say Saka. I think Cherky will just be better than Saka, like flat out. That's pretty much how I would see it. I had a couple more other predictions on the pod, so I actually would just encourage you to check out that in terms of what did I do. We also did best young player, best transfer, best other players to watch out for, flop player of the season, flop signing, first manager gets sacked, all that type of stuff. So I just encourage y'all to check that out, because that's where the rest of those predictions are. And I think this video's running on a little bit. Yeah, so Premier League predictions. Hopefully we'll be looking back on this in 9 months, and it's not too bad. So yeah, other than that, yeah, I'll catch you later. Peace.